At Thornwick Manor, every wedding ends in heartbreak. When Alara arrives for her own ceremony, she discovers haunting portraits, whispered curses, and a diary linking her to the brides who came before. Each page, each shadow hints that she is not just a guest in the manor, but a part of its tragic legacy. Will she find love, or become another lost bride in Thornwick's endless cycle of sorrow? The truth waits in the shadows. The carriage jolted slightly as it rumbled over the uneven, gravel-strewn path leading to Thornwick Manor. Outside, the sky was a heavy slate, clouds thick and low, as if the heavens themselves mourned the legacy of the place I was about to call home, at least for a little while. I pressed my palm against the frosted window, watching the iron gates swing open with a creak that echoed like a warning. Thornwick Manor rose before me, its spires clawing at the sky, the stonework twisted with centuries of ivy and shadow. The Gothic elegance was undeniable, but it carried with it a weight, an almost tangible sorrow that hung in the air. As the carriage came to a halt, I gathered my small suitcase, the leather worn but sturdy, and stepped down onto the cold ground. The chill was sharper here, biting at my cheeks and hands, despite the thick wool coat I wore. I inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth and aged wood filling my lungs. "Welcome to Thornwick, Miss Alara," the driver said, his voice low and tinged with an accent I couldn't place. He tipped his hat before turning away, leaving me alone with the manor's looming presence. I hesitated a moment at the threshold, the heavy oak doors carved with intricate patterns that seemed almost alive in the flickering lantern light. Gathering courage, I pushed them open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the grand entrance hall stretched before me like a cathedral. High vaulted ceilings rose above, supported by stone arches adorned with faded tapestries and wrought iron chandeliers dripping with crystals that caught the firelight. Shadows danced along the walls, and the air was thick with the scent of old wood, wax, and something else, something I couldn't name but felt deep in my bones. A grand staircase spiraled upward, its marble banister gleaming cold and smooth beneath my fingertips as I ascended slowly. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant tick of a great-grandfather clock somewhere deep in the manor's heart. I thought of Lucas, my fiancé, and how he would have loved the manor's tragic beauty. But even as I imagined his warm smile, a shiver ran down my spine. Thornwick was no ordinary place. It was whispered among the locals that every wedding held here ended in heartbreak, that the manor was cursed a tomb for love doomed from the start. I shook the thought away, blaming nerves. After all, this was my wedding, my future. I deserved to believe in a happy ending. Exploring the manor's shadowed halls, I found myself drawn to a narrow corridor lined with portraits, their gilded frames tarnished with age. One, in particular, caught my breath, a bride in a delicate lace gown, her dark hair pinned back, eyes strikingly familiar. Her lips curved in a melancholy smile, and I felt a strange pull, as if she were reaching out to me across the years. "Isolde," I whispered, reading the faded nameplate beneath the portrait. The name seemed to echo in my mind, stirring memories not my own. I traced the edges of the frame, wondering how this woman could look so much like me. Was it a trick of the light, a coincidence, or something far more profound? The wind moaned outside, rattling the windows as rain began to fall in slow, steady drops. I stood there a moment longer, lost in the haunting gaze of Isolde, before reluctantly turning away to face the long night ahead. As I settled into my room, the heavy curtains drawn tight against the storm, I couldn't shake the feeling that Thornwick Manor was alive, that it watched, waited, and remembered every whispered vow and shattered dream within its walls. Tomorrow the preparations would begin. Tomorrow I would take my place in the manor's long, tragic history, and I would do so with my eyes wide open, even if my heart trembled with fear. The night had wrapped Thornwick Manor in its shadowy embrace when I awoke. Gasping, heart pounding fiercely against my ribs, the remnants of the dream lingered like a thick fog in my mind, vivid and unrelenting. I was walking down the manor's ancient aisle, my wedding gown trailing behind me like a whisper of silk. The air was heavy with an unspoken sorrow, and from the corners of the dim chapel I heard the faintest whispers, as if the walls themselves mourned. My steps faltered, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. It was as though the past was bleeding through the present, pulling me into an echo I could neither resist nor fully understand. I sat up in the grand four-poster bed, the ornate canopy above casting intricate shadows in the moonlight filtering through the heavy velvet curtains. The chill of the manor seemed to seep into my bones. Taking a deep breath, I tried to shake the lingering unease, but the images from the dream refused to fade. Who was I in that vision? A bride. But not Mai had never seen that dress before, nor any face but my own reflected with sorrow. Morning light was slow to come, and when it did, it brought no relief. Breakfast was a quiet affair, the manor's ancient halls echoing with the soft clinks of china and the low hum of distant conversations. Lucas sat across from me, his brow furrowed with concern as I recounted the dream. His eyes searched mine, trying to find reason among the fear. "Alara, maybe it's just nerves," he said gently, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "This place, the history it's bound to get to anyone." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more, that these dreams were fragments of something buried deep within Thornwick's history and within me. That night, I was not just a visitor, but a part of the manor's tragic tapestry. Later that day, driven by a restless curiosity, I wandered into the manor's vast library. The scent of aged paper and leather filled the air, mingling with the faint trace of dust and secrets long hidden. Rows upon rows of books crowded the shelves, their spines cracked and faded, whispering stories of centuries past. It was there, behind a false panel cleverly disguised within the aged wooden desk, that I found it, a hidden compartment concealing a leather-bound diary, its cover cracked and worn by time. The brittle pages, yellowed and delicate, seemed to pulse with the weight of forgotten memories. As I traced the elegant script of the diary's first entry, a name surfaced disorder, the same name from the portrait I had glimpsed the day before. The diary belonged to a bride from the 19th century, a woman whose words told of love, betrayal, and a curse that had haunted Thornwick Manor through generations. Each bride, each wedding, ended in heartbreak and loss, bound by a cycle that no one had yet broken. With every page I turned, the sense of familiarity deepened. The stories in the diary echoed my dreams, the whispers I had heard in the shadowed halls. It was as if the manor was speaking to me, revealing its secrets through the soul of every woman who had worn the bridal veil before me. I felt a chill as I closed the diary, the candlelight flickering and casting long shadows that danced like spectres on the walls. The air was thick with the weight of history, and I knew then that my connection to Thornwick was more profound and more dangerous than I could have imagined. That evening, I returned to Lucas, diary in hand, desperate for his belief, his support. "Lucas," I whispered, "there's a curse here. It's real, and somehow I think I'm a part of it." He looked at me, his eyes searching, torn between skepticism and the unwavering love I had come to rely on. "We'll face it together," he promised, squeezing my hand. "Whatever it is." But as the manor settled into the night around us, I could not escape the gnawing fear that the past was not done with me, that the echoes of those lost brides had found a new voice in me, and that the wedding I was preparing for might yet end in tragedy. The night deepened, and with it the shadows grew longer. Thornwick Manor, with all its Gothic elegance and tragic history, was awakening once more its curse, ready to unfold anew. The heavy silence of Thornwick Manor seemed almost reverent as I stood before the towering portrait that had captured my attention since my arrival. The flickering flame of a nearby candle cast wavering shadows across the canvas, and in that shifting light, the bride's painted eyes seemed to follow me, alive with a haunting intensity. Isolde. The name was etched faintly on a brass plaque beneath the frame, but it was more than just a name. It was a whisper from the past, a thread connecting me to a history I was only beginning to understand. I stepped closer, my breath shallow. The gown Isolde wore was magnificent layers of cream, silk and lace, embroidered with delicate floral patterns that had faded to muted whispers of colour. Her hair was piled high, adorned with pearls and a wreath of tiny white blossoms. Yet it was her expression that caught me, the serene smile that barely masked a shadow of sorrow in her eyes. It was as if she held a secret too heavy to bear. My fingers tingled as I reached out, hesitating before touching the cool glass. Why did she feel so familiar? It was more than the passing resemblance I had noticed earlier. It was an eerie sense of recognition, as if her soul was somehow mine too. Retreating from the portrait, I made my way to the manor's library, the air thick with the musk of aged paper and polished oak. Dust motes danced lazily in the afternoon sun filtering through stained glass windows, painting the walls with fragments of ruby and emerald. Here, in the quiet sanctuary of forgotten knowledge, I hoped to find answers. Fingers trailing over cracked leather spines, I pulled several volumes that referenced Thornwick's history. One, in particular, caught my eye, brittle journal, its cover worn but the pages surprisingly intact. The handwriting was elegant, looping with a grace that spoke of a bygone era. As I read, Isolde's voice emerged from the ink, a chronicle of love and despair. Her words told of a wedding day filled with hope, soon overshadowed by betrayal and heartbreak. The curse was not just rumor. It was a legacy of pain passed through generations. Each bride who walked the manor's halls was bound to the same tragic fate, doomed to relive sorrow until the cycle was broken. And the most chilling revelation was the hint that the same soul was reborn time and again, destined to suffer the same heartbreak in endless repetition. My heart hammered as the pieces fell into place. The portraits, the dreams, the strange sense of Dacia. Was it possible I was the latest incarnation? The thought was terrifying yet inexplicably familiar, like a dark melody I had heard before. Later, I found Lucas waiting in the drawing room, his brow furrowed with concern as I approached. I hesitated, but knew I had to share. "Lucas," I began, voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you. It's about the manor, the curse, and me." He reached for my hand, steady and warm. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." I explained the diary, the portrait, the dreams. His eyes searched mine, a mixture of disbelief and worry. "Ilara, this sounds like something out of a Gothic novel," he said softly, "but if it's real, we'll find a way." His faith was a bomb, but I could not shake the weight of the curse pressing on my soul. That night, sleep came reluctantly. My dreams carried me to another time, Isolde's wedding day. The manor was resplendent, draped in white and gold, but the festive air was laced with tension. I saw faces, friends and family smiling, but shadowed by unspoken fears. Whispers curled through the halls like smoke, and beneath the joy, A dark thread of betrayal wound its way through the celebration. I awoke with a start, the echo of a soldier's sorrow ringing in my ears. Was this my fate too? The manor's cursed cycle seemed inescapable, yet I could not surrender. Somewhere within me, a flicker of defiance sparked. If I was Isolde reborn, then I had the chance to choose differently, to break free from the looping fate that had claimed so many before me. As dawn crept over Thornwick, I steeled myself. The portrait's secret was no longer just a mystery. It was my burden and my call to courage. The manor's shadows whispered warnings, but I would face them head on, for love, for life, for the possibility of a new story written by my own hand. But as I prepared to delve deeper into the manor's secrets, a chill ran down my spine. Fate had a way of resisting change, and I was only just beginning to understand the true cost of defiance. With a final glance at Isolde's portrait, I whispered, "I will not be your echo anymore." The candle flickered violently, as if the manor itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if I could truly break the cycle. And so my journey into the heart of Thornwick's curse began, a path winding through shadows and memories. Love and Losware, the past and present collided, and the fate of every bride hung in the balance. The moment I stepped into the dim corridor of Thornwick Manor, a chill brushed against the nape of my neck, as if the very walls whispered secrets meant only for me. The flickering candle sconces cast long, wavering shadows that slithered along the ancient stone, creating a dance of light and darkness that seemed alive. I paused, heart pounding, straining to catch the softest murmur or whisper that slipped through the silence like a breath of the past. The voice was barely audible, a sigh carried on the cold air, elusive yet unmistakable. I spun around, eyes scanning the empty hallway, but there was no one. Only the heavy silence answered me, thick and suffocating. My pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and fascination pulling me deeper into the manor's embrace. I moved forward, each step echoing softly, the ancient floorboards groaning beneath my weight. The air grew colder, and a faint scent of faded roses and damp earth curled around me. It was a scent I recognized from my dreams, the scent of Thornwick's forgotten brides. Reaching the grand library, I found it shrouded in shadows. The towering shelves laden with dusty volumes that seemed to watch me with silent judgment. It was here that Mr. Hawthorne awaited. He stood by the fireplace, his figure stoic against the flickering flames, eyes reflecting a depth of knowledge and sorrow. "You're feeling it, aren't you?" His voice was low, gravelly, yet compelling. The whispers, the shadows. "Thornwick does not forget, neither do you." "What do you mean?" I asked, swallowing the lump in my throat. He stepped closer, the firelight tracing the sharp angles of his face. "You carry the weight of many brides before you, Alara. Their hopes, their heartbreaks, their fates intertwined with yours." A shiver ran through me as his words settled. The portraits, the dreams, the strange pull of the minaret was all connected. Am I cursed like them? The question escaped on a shaky breath. "The curse is not so simple," he replied, eyes darkening. "It is a cycle, a loop of love and loss. You are both the key and the captive." I wanted to protest, to deny the growing dread threatening to consume me, but the truth in his gaze was undeniable. And yet, beneath the fear, a stubborn ember of defiance sparked within me. I would not be a victim. Later that night, as a cold wind rattled the window panes of my chamber, I sat by the tall sash window, watching the moonlight spill over the manicured garden. The velvet curtains swayed softly, and from somewhere deep within the manor, the faint strains of a piano melody drifted through the halls, haunting, beautiful, and achingly sad. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling utterly alone yet inexplicably connected to the countless souls who had walked these halls before me. Footsteps approached, gentle and familiar. Lucas appeared, his eyes full of concern but steady as ever. "Alara," he whispered, "this place, it's trying to break us, but we're stronger." I rose, stepping into the moonlight with him. Our hands met, trembling but resolute. "I don't want to lose you," I said, voice thick with emotion. "You won't," he vowed, tightening his grip. "We'll face this together, no matter what shadows come." In that moment, beneath the watchful stars and the bloom of nightshade flowers, hope flickered. But even as we clung to each other, I knew Thornwick Manor was far from done with me. The whispers would continue, the shadows would deepen, and the curse was waiting. But so was I, and I was ready to fight. The heavy silence of Thornwick Manor's library seemed to press in from all sides as I settled into a corner, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows across the spines of forgotten tomes. The scent of aged paper and melting wax mingled with the faint mustiness of disuse, but I barely noticed. My fingers trembled slightly as I turned the brittle pages of an ancient ledger. The script faded, but still legible enough to reveal the manor's dark, tangled history. For hours, I pored over the records, piecing together fragments of lives long lost to tragedy. Each entry, each faded photograph, whispered secrets of weddings that had ended in heartbreak and death. But one story stood out, a tale of forbidden love and bitter betrayal that seemed to echo through the manor's very walls. I read of a young bride, much like myself, whose love had been forbidden by the rigid social codes of her time. Her heart belonged to a man deemed unsuitable by her family, and in the shadows of Thornwick, their love blossomed in stolen moments beneath moonlit skies. But that love was shattered by a cruel betrayal, not by the man she loved, but by someone close to her, someone she had trusted. The curse, I realized with a sinking heart, was not born of random misfortune. It was a wound inflicted by treachery, festering through the centuries and binding every bride to a fate of sorrow. A soft knock broke my concentration, and I looked up to see Lucas standing hesitantly at the library's entrance. His eyes held concern, and when he stepped inside, he closed the door with a gentle click, shutting out the oppressive silence of the manor. "Alara," he said softly, crossing the room to sit beside me. "You've been here all day. What are you hoping to find?" I hesitated, the weight of what I had discovered pressing heavily on my chest. "Answers," I whispered. "I need to understand where this curse began, if it can be broken." Lucas reached out, taking my hand in his. His touch was warm and reassuring, a steady anchor in the storm of my thoughts. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." His words kindled a fragile hope inside me, but the manor was never far from its shroud of darkness. That evening, during a modest pre-wedding celebration in the grand hall, the air was thick with polite laughter and the clinking of glasses beneath glittering chandeliers. Yet, as I mingled among the guests, a sudden shift caught my attention. A fleeting shadow flickered across the stained glass window, casting a jagged pattern of darkness across the polished floor. A chill ran down my spine. The manor was reminding me that its grip had not loosened. Later, seeking clarity, I found myself wandering the stone corridors until I came upon the caretaker. His presence was a constant enigma. His sharp eyes seemed to see through the manor's facades and into its soul. "You seek the truth," he said quietly when I approached, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the truth is a double-edged sword. To break the curse, you must confront the pain it was forged from." I nodded, the weight of his words settling deep within me. What must I do? He looked away, the flicker of candlelight catching the lines etched into his face. Face the betrayal. Face the past. Only then can the future be yours. That night, as I lay awake, listening to the wind sighing through the manor's ancient windows, I understood that love and pain were entwined in Thornwick's history. My love for Lucas was fierce and true, but the shadow of the curse loomed over us like a gathering storm. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and yet I was determined to fight for a future where love could triumph. The manor held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game that had been played for centuries, and I was no longer content to be a pawn. As dawn approached, the first light of day barely touching the horizon, I knew that unraveling the curse was not just a matter of history, was a test of courage, of heart, and of the unyielding strength of forbidden love. But would it be enough to break the cycle, or was my fate sealed like those who came before me? The answer lay somewhere in the shadows of Thornwick Manor, waiting to be discovered. The low hum of the manor was a constant companion, a subtle reminder that Thornwick was never truly silent. As I sat curled in the aged armchair by the grand fireplace, the room seemed to breathe around Metha, flickering flames casting long quivering shadows on the crimson damask walls. The portraits above the mantel, faded yet dignified, watched silently. Faces of brides from centuries past, their eyes glassy and sorrowful, seemed almost to plead. I traced the delicate carvings on the wooden frame of the family tree, where each name bore the weight of a story I now knew too well. I closed my eyes, letting the crackling warmth seep into my skin, and was transported back through time, through memories not my own but undeniably mine. I saw myself in silk gowns of varying styles and eras, each wedding day marked by a different hope and the same devastating end. The laughter, the whispered promises, the stolen glances tinged with fear-all, mingled together in a bittersweet symphony. Each incarnation held a spark of joy quickly extinguished by the cruel hand of fate. Opening my eyes, I swallowed hard against the lump rising in my throat. How could one's soul be condemned to such endless torment? The curse was no longer a distant tale whispered in hushed tones. It was the very marrow in my bones. The manor's Gothic elegance, once merely an aesthetic, now felt like a living entity its stone walls, absorbing my despair, its ornate chandeliers reflecting my fractured hope. The door creaked open quietly, and Lucas stepped in, his brow furrowed with concern as he took in my somber expression. He moved toward me with a gentle urgency, dropping onto the ottoman beside my chair. His hand reached out, fingers intertwining with mine, grounding me in the present. "Alara," he said softly, his voice a balm to my frayed nerves, "I know this place tries to suffocate you, but you're not alone. We face this together." His steadfast gaze met mine, unwavering and full of promise. For the first time since arriving at Thornwick, I felt a flicker of true hope. Lucas's presence was a tether, anchoring me against the swirling maelstrom of fear and uncertainty. The curse's grip was strong, but so was our bond. Later, in the manor's vast library, I found myself surrounded by towering shelves laden with dusty volumes and fragile letters. My fingers trembled as I unfolded a brittle letter penned by one of my past selves. The elegant script spoke of love and loss, of dreams shattered beneath the manor's oppressive shadow. The scent of aged paper mingled with the faint aroma of lavender, and I felt the weight of history pressing down on me. Each word deepened my understanding of the curses, cruelty, and the emotional labyrinth I was trapped within. Yet, even in the face of such sorrow, I sensed a thread of resilience woven through these past lives, defiant spark refusing to be extinguished. As dusk fell, the manor's grandeur transformed. The chandeliers cast a soft, golden glow that flickered with the growing darkness outside. Lucas found me again, this time in the sitting room, where the air felt heavier, charged with the manor's restless energy. He took my hands in his thumbs brushing reassuring circles over my knuckles. "No matter what comes," he whispered, "I'll be here. We'll face it all, side by side." His words wrapped around me like a shield, momentarily pushing back the encroaching shadows. I nodded, drawing strength from his unwavering support. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the hallway, carrying with it the faint strains of a piano's mournful melody. The haunting tune spilled into the room from the music parlor, echoing down the corridors and stirring something deep within me. The notes were both beautiful and chilling, a perfect reflection of the manor itself, Gothic elegance entwined with restless sorrow. I rose, compelled to follow the music's call, with Lucas close behind. As we moved through the shadowed halls, I felt the manor's pulse quicken, as if aware of our defiance. The ties that bound me to this place were complex, woven from threads of love, loss, and an unyielding fate. But with Lucas by my side, I dared to hope that the cycle might finally be broken. The night stretched on, thick with anticipation and unspoken promises. The past whispered its warnings, but our hearts beat louder. Whatever darkness Thornwick held, we would face it together, bound not just by love, but by the courage to fight for a future beyond the curse. Yet, as the piano's last note lingered in the stillness, I couldn't shake the feeling that the manor was watching, waiting to test the strength of our ties that bind. The sky was bruised with the bruising purples and greys of an impending storm as Thornwick Manor seemed to hold its breath in the gathering dusk. I stood just inside the grand foyer, the chill of the evening creeping past the heavy oak doors I had only moments before shut behind me. The manor's air was thick with shadows that stretched like creeping fingers across the walls, and the flicker of candlelight danced uncertainly on the ornate wallpaper, casting ghostly shapes that seemed to whisper secrets I was not yet ready to hear. It was then the door groaned open again, the ancient hinges protesting, and a figure stepped inside. A man, tall, with silver-streaked black hair and piercing grey eyes that seemed to see right through the gloom and into the marrow of the manor itself. He wore a long, dark coat that swayed behind him like a shadow given flesh timeless, and just as foreboding. His presence shifted the atmosphere, a subtle but unmistakable weight settling over the room. Alara Thornwick, his voice was low, measured with a tone that brooked no denial. I nodded, heart hammering in my chest. "Yes, and you are." "Call me Thorn," he said simply, stepping further inside as the door shut behind him with a final, echoing thud. "I am a descendant of the manor's original owners, and I have come to warn you." Lucas appeared behind me, his hand finding mine in a silent gesture of reassurance, but his brow furrowed as he studied the stranger. "Warn us about what?" Mr. Thorn's eyes held a storm of their own as he spoke. "The curse that binds Thornwick Manor. It is older and darker than even you have imagined." We moved to the library, a cavernous room lined with shelves sagging under the weight of leather-bound tomes and forgotten memories. Mr. Thorn unfurled an ancient map across the oak table, its edges yellowed and brittle. The faded ink traced the manor's grounds, marking places that had long been sealed off or hidden in shadow. "These markings," he explained, tapping a trembling finger on a particular spot, "are places where tragedy has struck again and again. Each location tied to a doomed wedding, to a lover lost, My breath caught. The weight of his words pressed down on me like the heavy velvet curtains that framed the stained glass windows. A part of me wanted to believe him, to grasp at the thread of hope that maybe understanding the curse's origin could give us the power to break it. Yet another part recoiled, fearful that this visitor was but another dark piece in the manor's deadly puzzle. Lucas's hand tightened around mine, grounding me. "We'll face this together," he said quietly, but I saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. Later, beneath the towering stained glass window that spilled fractured light across the cold stone floor, I confronted Lucas. "Can we trust him?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "How do we know his intentions?" He looked down, the rain casting a silvery sheen on the glass behind him. "I don't know," he admitted. "But right now, we have no choice but to listen." The tension between us was a fragile thread, fraying under the weight of fear and uncertainty. The forbidden nature of our love, already tested by the manor's dark history, now faced new opposition, not from the curse alone, but from mistrust and the unknown. When night fell fully, I found myself drawn to the cold garden, where the nightshade blossoms bloomed with a spectral glow beneath the moonlight. The scent was at once intoxicating and deadly, beauty and danger intertwined as tightly as my heart and fate. The visitor's warning echoed in my mind, a quiet drumbeat against the silence. I was alone with my thoughts, the wind whispering through the branches, carrying with it the promise of trials yet to come. But beneath the fear, a fierce determination coiled within me. If this curse was to be broken, if the cycle of tragedy was to end with me, then I would face whatever darkness lay ahead, even if it meant questioning everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the shadows that bind us. As the wind stirred the nightshade, I made a silent vow. I would not be another lost bride in Thornwick's grim history. The storm was coming, and I would stand against it. But could I stand alone? Or would the ghosts of the past finally claim us all? The manor seemed to hold its breath once more, waiting, watching, as the night deepened around me. The moon hung low and heavy in the ink-black sky, casting a silvery glow that seeped through the towering, twisted branches surrounding Thornwick Manor. As I wandered the shadowed grounds, the manor's oppressive magnificence weighed on my chest like a leaden shroud. I needed to escape the suffocating walls for just a moment, to find a place where the past's grip might loosen, even if only slightly. My steps led me to a rusted gate, half hidden beneath crawling ivy and thorny vines. The wrought iron was cold and intricate, curling into dark floral patterns that seemed to pulse with some latent life under the moonlight. Pushing the gate open with a creak that shattered the silence, I stepped into a secret garden, a hidden world preserved yet untouched by time. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint, almost intoxicating aroma of night-blooming flowers. There, nestled among shadowed leaves, were clusters of nightshade delicate purple blossoms with bell-shaped petals that shimmered faintly in the moon's glow. They looked fragile yet dangerous, their beauty laced with a silent warning. The garden felt like a sanctuary and a tomb all at once, a place where love and death danced in eternal embrace. I knelt beside one of the clusters, my fingers brushing the velvety petals. The soft rustle of the leaves whispered secrets I could almost hear, echoes of weddings long past, promises shattered, and hearts broken beneath the same sky. The nightshade seemed to pulse with the manor's dark history, a living symbol of the cycle I was trapped in. I wondered how many brides before me had stood here, caught between hope and despair, love and doom. Lost in thought, I almost didn't hear the soft footsteps behind me. Turning, I saw Lucas emerge from the shadows, his face etched with concern and something deeper determination. He joined me on the cold stone bench, and we sat in silence for a moment, the fragile blooms swaying gently in the night breeze. "Ilara," he said softly, his voice steady yet laced with worry, "I know this place scares you, but I believe in us, in you. Maybe together we can break whatever binds this place." His words warmed me, a flicker of light in the encroaching darkness. I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his presence. The curse that had haunted Thornwick Manor and its brides was a monster I had to face, not just for me, but for all the souls trapped in its loop. Before we could speak further, a figure emerged from the shadows at the garden's edge, the caretaker. His silver-streaked hair caught the moonlight, and his sharp eyes held centuries of knowledge and sorrow. He moved with the quiet authority that had always unnerved me. "The Nightshade," he began, his voice a gravelly whisper, "is both a key and a lock. It embodies the duality of this curse, beauty and poison, life and death intertwined. To break the cycle, you must understand its power and embrace the darkness as much as the light." His words settled over me like a chilling breeze. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but it was the only way. As we stood together in the garden, surrounded by the eerie glow of nightshade blooms, I felt a fierce resolve ignite within me. The manor's tragic history would not claim me. I would rewrite my story, even if it meant walking through shadows deeper than any I had known. The night whispered promises of change, but the dawn was still far away. And in that fragile twilight, I knew the fight for love and freedom was just beginning. The dim glow of candlelight flickered unevenly across the cracked surface of the ancient mirror, casting fractured shadows across the ornate frame. I approached it cautiously, drawn by a strange compulsion I couldn't explain. The manor had whispered secrets to me since my arrival, but nothing had unsettled me like this moment. As I peered into the broken glass, the jagged shards reflected a fragmented image, just of myself, but of countless others. Brides, all draped in gowns that spoke of errors long past, their eyes filled with sorrow, longing, and a haunting despair that mirrored my own. The first shard showed a woman in a delicate lace dress, her dark hair pinned up with small pearl accents. Her expression was one of quiet resignation, lips pressed into a thin line as if she bore a terrible secret. Another shard revealed a bride with fiery red curls cascading over a corseted bodice, her eyes wide with frightened hope. Each reflection seemed to pulse with life, their silent stories echoing through the glass. I stepped closer, my breath catching in my throat as I realized these were not mere reflections, they were glimpses of my past selves. The countless brides who had walked Thornwick Manor's shadowed halls before me, each doomed to heartbreak and tragedy. The weight of their stories crashed down on me like a tidal wave. I was not just alone. I was the sum of every sorrowful bride who had ever stood where I stood now. A sudden chill ran down my spine, the air thickening as if the manor itself was holding its breath. I reached out tentatively to touch the mirror, fingertips brushing against the cracked surface. The shards shimmered and shifted, and in a moment that felt suspended in time, I saw flashes, moments of love and betrayal, whispered promises and bitter goodbyes. The looping fate that bound us all was undeniable. "Ilara." Lucas's voice was soft but steady behind me. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, concern etched across his features. He crossed the room swiftly, closing the distance between us. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I swallowed hard, trying to find words that would make sense of the chaos inside me. I think I am. I saw them, Lucas, all of them, the brides who came before me. Their faces, their pain. It's like they're trapped in this manor, and somehow I'm part of that cycle. He took my hands in his, grounding me amid the storm. You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together. His reassurance was a lifeline, but the visions clung to my mind like shadows. I recounted the fragmented memories, the whispered promises, the betrayals, the moments when hope had flickered and died. Each shard of reflection was a thread in the tapestry of my soul, tangled and worn by centuries of suffering. As the candlelight flickered, the shadows danced wildly on the walls, blurring the lines between past and present. The manor seemed alive, breathing with the weight of its history. I felt the oppressive pull of the cursed titan round me, a suffocating grip that threatened to erase my will. But amid the despair, a spark of determination ignited. I would not be another tragic chapter in Thornwick Manor's story. I would fight the looping fate that sought to claim me. With Lucas by my side, I believed there was a way to rewrite the ending. I sank into a nearby chair, exhaustion washing over me. The faces in the mirror faded, but their stories lingered in my heart. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, steeling myself for the battle ahead. We'll break this curse, I whispered into the quiet room, or die trying. Outside, the wind howled through the gnarled branches, carrying with it the murmurs of past brides and the promise of a fate yet unwritten. As the night deepened, so did my resolve. Thornwick Manor's shadows were long, but my light flickering and fragile would not be extinguished without a fight. And so, in the fractured reflections of a broken mirror, I found not just despair, but a hope that would lead me through the darkness, toward a dawn where love might finally conquer fate. The moon hung high over Thornwick Manor, casting an ethereal silver glow on the twisting ivy and the ancient stones that had stood sentinel for centuries. Alara's heart pounded as she slipped quietly through the shadowed halls, careful not to disturb the sleeping house or Lucas. She had promised herself she wouldn't tell him about this nocturnal meeting. Some things were too dangerous to share. Outside, the night air was crisp and carried the faint, intoxicating scent of nightshade flowers blooming in the hidden garden. The petals shimmered faintly, as if imbued with their own light. An eerie contrast to the darkness that enveloped the manor. There, waiting silently by a moss-covered stone altar, stood the caretaker. His figure was enveloped in a heavy coat, the hood pulled low, but his sharp grey eyes caught the moonlight as they met hers. "You came," he said softly, his voice a gravelly whisper that seemed to blend into the night. Ilara nodded, her breath catching in her throat. "I have to know if there's truly a way to end this nightmare, if this curse can be broken." The caretaker's gaze was steady, unreadable. "There is a way," he admitted, "but it comes with a price. You must be willing to face what lies beneath the surface, the darkness that has clung to Thornwick for generations." She took a tentative step forward, her fingers brushing against the cold stone of the altar. Upon it lay a small collection of relics, a silver locket tarnished with age, a faded ribbon from a bridal gown, and a handful of dried nightshade blossoms. The caretaker handed her a single, fresh bloomler, deepest purple, almost black. "This nightshade holds the power to unravel the threads binding your soul to the curse," he explained. "But the ritual must be done under the full moon, in silence and with pure intent." Ilara's fingers closed tightly around the bloom, its petals surprisingly warm despite the chill in the air. She felt a shiver run down her spine, not from cold, but from the weight of what she was about to do. "What must I do?" she whispered. The caretaker stepped back, beginning to chant in a language that twisted and curled like smoke through the night air. The words were ancient, filled with a solemn power that made the hairs on Ilara's arms stand on end. She repeated the incantation softly, her voice trembling yet resolute. As the ritual unfolded, the garden seemed to hold its breath. The scent of earth and decay mixed with the sweet, poisonous aroma of the nightshade. Shadows lengthened and danced, as if the manor itself watched, waiting. Ilara felt energy build within her, a fierce, aching surge that threatened to overwhelm her senses. Images flashed behind her closed eyes, brides from centuries past, their faces pale and haunted, their whispers echoing promises and regrets. She saw Isolde's sorrow, felt the sting of betrayal that birthed this curse. Tears slipped down her cheeks, mingling with the cool night air. She clenched the nightshade bloom tighter, willing herself to endure. "I will not be another lost soul," she vowed silently. When the caretaker finally ceased his chant, a heavy silence settled over the garden. The ritual was complete, but the air remained thick with tension as though the curse had heard her defiance and was preparing its response. "You have taken a dangerous step," the caretaker warned quietly. "The path ahead will not be easy, and the shadows will not release you without a fight." Ilara nodded, steeling herself against the fear that threatened to consume her. "I have to try, for Lucas, for myself, for all of us." The caretaker gave a slow, approving nod before retreating into the darkness, leaving Ilara alone beneath the moon's watchful eye. She lingered a moment longer, breathing in the heavy night air, then turned back toward the manor. Inside, laughter drifted down the halls, carefree and unaware of the storm gathering just beyond the veil of their reality. As Ilara crossed the threshold, a solitary tear traced a cold path down her cheek. She carried with her a secret heavier than the nightshade's poison and a hope that this time love might triumph over fate. But as the manor's ancient walls seemed to pulse with a knowing silence, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that the curse was far from finished. The night drew on, thick with promises and peril, as the midnight pact bound her fate ever tighter to Thornwick Manor's dark legacy. The heavy wooden door creaked open, its iron hinges groaning like a forgotten lament as I stepped into the manor's gallery. Dust motes danced in the slanting afternoon light that filtered weakly through stained glass windows, casting fractured colors like shards of a broken prism onto the stone floor. The air smelled of aged linen and forgotten memories, a scent I had come to associate with Thornwick Manor's haunted halls. Before me hung a tapestry so vast it seemed to swallow the wall. Its threads, faded yet stubbornly vibrant in places, wove a story both beautiful and tragic. A wedding scene unfolded in painstaking detail, brides with tear-streaked faces, grooms with clenched jaws, guests frozen in silent horror. The embroidery captured moments of joy shattered by despair, the very essence of every doomed union the manor had witnessed. I traced a trembling finger along the woven silk, feeling the raised texture beneath my touch. A chill crept up my spine. Here in the fibers was the curse itself, stitched into existence by hands long gone but never forgotten. The realization struck me with overwhelming force. The curse was not just a tale whispered in fear, but a living, breathing entity entwined with the manor's very soul. Footsteps echoed softly behind me, and I turned to see Lucas approaching, his eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "Ilara," he said softly, "these tapestries, they're unlike anything I've ever seen." "They tell the story we all feared," I whispered. "Every bride, every wedding, every heartbreak. It's all here, forever woven into Thornwick's walls." He reached out, taking my hand in his. "But we aren't just part of the past. We can change the story." The sound of the heavy door closing sent a shiver through the room. From the shadows emerged the caretaker, his presence sudden yet quiet, like a whispered warning. His eyes, sharp and knowing, fixed on the tapestry. "You see it now," he said, voice low and gravelly. "The threads of fate that bind this place. But beware, Elara. To unravel them is to confront the darkness that gave them life." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle deep within me. The tapestry was more than history. It was a mirror reflecting my own soul, tangled in a web of reincarnation and tragedy. Yet, beneath the dread, a spark of determination ignited. If the curse was woven into the manor, then perhaps it could be unwoven. Later that night, alone in my chamber, the storm outside raged like a wild beast, rain lashing against the windows and wind howling through the ancient eaves. I sat by the flickering fireplace, the tapestry's images replaying in my mind. Brides I had never met, yet somehow knew. Faces blurred by time but etched into my memory. Their stories were my stories, a tapestry of love and loss woven through lifetimes. The manor's Gothic elegance, with its sweeping arches and shadowed corners, no longer felt like a prison but a challenge. I was not merely a victim of fate, but a thread in the grand design, one that I could choose to pull, to unravel, or to weave anew. A sudden crack of thunder echoed through the night as I rose, resolve hardening like the stones beneath my feet. The curse was a tapestry, yes, but every thread could be traced, every knot untied, and I would be the one to do it. As dawn crept hesitantly over Thornwick Manor, I knew the path ahead would be perilous. Yet for the first time, the threads of destiny felt less like chains and more like a challenge, one I was ready to meet head-on. But could love truly defy such woven fate? The answer waited somewhere in the shadows of Thornwick's ancient halls, whispering my name, beckoning me forward, and I would not turn away. The storm outside Thornwick Manor raged with a furious intensity, rain pelting the tall leaded windows like 1,000 whispered warnings. Inside, the manor's ancient walls seemed to breathe with the weight of centuries, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows across the richly woven tapestries and polished dark wood. I stood by the window, my gaze lost in the tempest beyond, the cold glass misting beneath my fingertips. The mournful howl of the wind seemed to echo the ache inside me, a symphony of sorrow and yearning that had become all too familiar. It was in the parlour that I found it, a small, intricately carved music box, tucked away on a dusty shelf beneath a faded portrait of a bride with eyes that mirrored my own. The wood was worn smooth by time, adorned with delicate filigree and a tiny silver latch shaped like a nightshade blossom. My heart quickened as I reached out, the air around me thick with anticipation. With a gentle click, I released the latch and lifted the lid. Inside, a tiny ballerina twirled slowly, her pale dress shimmering faintly in the candlelight. As I wound the ornate key, a haunting melody began to play, a ballad both beautiful and tragic, its notes weaving through the room like a ghostly whisper. The music wrapped around me, each note unfurling memories not my own. I saw flashes of long-ago weddings, silken gowns stained with tears, whispered promises shattered by betrayal, faces blurred by time but etched with pain. The cursed history of Thornwick Manor unfolded before me in vivid, aching detail. I was no longer just Elara. I was every bride who had ever loved and lost within these walls. A chill ran down my spine as the vision deepened. I saw a young couple exchanging vows beneath a canopy of nightshade blossoms, their love fierce yet doomed. I felt the sting of their final embrace, the silence that followed a scream. The music box's ballad was a lament for all the lost lovers, a reminder of the cycle I was trapped within. Lucas's footsteps approached softly behind me, grounding me back to the present. He reached out, his hand warm and steady as it covered mine. "Elara," he whispered, his voice a balm against the storm, "we'll face this together. Whatever comes, I'm here." I turned to him, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Do you believe me about the curse? About what I'm becoming?" He nodded, determination etched into his features. "I believe in us, in our love, that has to be stronger than any curse." For a moment, the weight seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile hope. Yet the music box continued to play, its notes a bittersweet reminder that our path would not be easy. The past was never far behind, and the shadows of Thornwick Manor stretched long and deep. As the last note faded into the stillness, I knew the journey ahead would test every ounce of courage and love I possessed. But for the first time, I felt ready to face the darkness, armed with the memories of those who had come before, and the promise of a love that refused to be broken. The storm outside began to abate, the thunder rolling into a distant murmur. I closed the music box gently, its secrets safe for now, and took Lucas's hand. Together we stepped into the uncertain night, bound by love and shadowed by fate, ready to write our own story amidst the echoes of lost lovers. The heavy wooden door groaned as I pushed it open, revealing a narrow stone staircase winding downward into the bowels of Thornwick Manor. The air grew colder and damper with each step, the scent of earth and something long forgotten settling deep into my lungs. My fingers brushed against the rough, cold walls, slick with dampness, as flickering candle sconces cast quivering shadows that danced like restless spirits along the ancient stones. I hesitated briefly, the weight of what I was about to uncover pressing on my heart like the stones surrounding me. Yet a strange compulsion urged me forward. This was no longer merely about curiosity. It was about understanding, about confronting the dark legacy entwined with my very soul. At the base of the stairs, a narrow corridor stretched out, lined with alcoves and niches that held relics shrouded in dust and cobwebs. My footsteps echoed softly in the silence, broken only by the distant drip of water somewhere deep within the manor's foundation. I paused before a glass case, its surface cracked and foggy, revealing a delicate lace veil folded beside a faded bouquet remnants of a bride long gone. A sudden chill ran down my spine, and I turned toward a small chamber off the corridor. The room was cramped, its low ceiling arched with stone ribs that resembled the ribs of some ancient beast. On a wooden pedestal lay a tarnished silver locket, half buried beneath a scattering of brittle papers. I knelt, breath-catching, as I lifted the locket free, its clasp rusted but still holding something precious inside. I opened it with a trembling hand. Inside, a miniature portrait stared back at Mia, woman with dark hair and eyes that mirrored my own, framed by the delicate brushstrokes of a 19th century artist. My breath hitched. The resemblance was uncanny, impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence. Beside the locket lay a letter, its ink smudged and faded. Carefully, I unfolded it, revealing words trembling with grief and desperation. "My beloved, if this letter finds you, know that my heart is shattered. The world has conspired against our love, and though it may condemn me to this fate, my soul will endure beyond the shadows. Remember me not as a victim, but as the one who dared to love in defiance of all. Yours eternally, Isolde." The name struck me with the force of a revelation. Isolde the bride in the portrait downstairs, the ghost haunting these halls, the echo in my dreams. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears blurring my vision. How many times had this story played out? How many times had I been this woman, doomed to lose the love I held most dear? footsteps approached softly behind me. I rose to see Lucas, his expression etched with concern and resolve. Without a word, he took my hand, grounding me in the present, even as the past threatened to swallow me whole. Together, we ventured deeper, the catacombs growing darker and more foreboding. At the chamber's end stood a stone altar, its surface carved with intricate symbols and an inscription worn nearly illegible by time. Here lies the truth of Thornwick's curseborn, of a love forbidden and a betrayal that stained these halls forevermore. I traced the letters with my fingertips, feeling the weight of generations pressing down. The caretaker's earlier words echoed in my mind, warning that the curse was not merely a tale, but a living wound in the manor's heart. As I read aloud, a sudden gust swept through the chamber, extinguishing our candlelight and plunging us into darkness. The cold wind whispered secrets in my ear, warnings, pleas, perhaps even curses. The manor itself seemed to breathe around us, alive with the memories of every bride who had walked this path and met tragedy. In that moment, I understood the full scope of my burden. This was not just my story, it was the story of every soul trapped in this cycle of love and loss. Yet amid the despair, a flicker of hope remained. The knowledge I had gained was a weapon, a means to confront the past and fight for a future unbound by fate's cruel loop. I squeezed Lucas's hand, finding strength in his presence. Together, we would face the shadows beneath the manor. Together, we would try to rewrite the story. But as we ascended the stairs back toward the surface, I couldn't shake the feeling that the greatest test was yet to command, that the price of breaking the curse might be more than either of us could bear. The manor's secrets had been unearthed, but the night was far from over, and somewhere, in the depths of Thornwick's dark heart, the past was watching, waiting, and ready to strike again. I steeled myself for what lay ahead, for in the catacombs beneath Thornwick Manor, the ghosts of love and betrayal were not merely echoes, they were a living force, and I was entwined in their eternal dance. The sky above Thornwick Manor brooded with heavy, swollen clouds, their leaden grey hues threatening a storm that seemed to mirror the turmoil swelling inside me. I stepped cautiously through the grand hall, my footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rugs that had long since absorbed the whispers of those who had walked here before. The portraits lining the walls, ancient brides in their haunting finery, their eyes painted with a sorrow that transcended time, seemed to follow me, their gazes accusing and mournful. A sudden chill swept the air, prickling my skin and sending a shudder down my spine. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the weight of Thornwick's history pressing down on me, a heavy cloak of dread I could neither shrug off nor confront fully. Thunder rumbled distantly, low and ominous, as if the heavens themselves were warning of the storm to come, not just the one in the sky, but the tempest brewing in my soul. I paused before the portrait of Isolde, the bride whose face had haunted my dreams and waking thoughts. Her eyes, so like mine, seemed almost to plead for release, for salvation from the endless cycle of tragedy. I traced the delicate frame with a trembling finger, wishing desperately for a way to break free, to rewrite the story written in blood and sorrow. Later, I found myself in the garden, under a sky swollen with threatening clouds. The air was unnervingly still, but the nightshade plants around me swayed violently in the absence of wind, their deep purple blossoms vibrant against the dull earth. I knelt and reached out, letting my fingers brush a single flower. A sharp pulse of cold energy shot through my hand, a reminder that the nightshade was more than mere floret, was a symbol, a key entwined with the curse itself. The duality of its beauty and danger echoed the very essence of Thornwick and of my own predicament. I could feel something shifting inside me, a tension tightening like a noose. The garden's shadows lengthened as the clouds released a sudden gust, scattering petals like dark confetti in the air. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, drawing strength from the earth beneath me, from Lucas's unwavering love that had become my anchor in this maelstrom. That evening, a dinner was held in the manor's lavish dining room, the heavy chandeliers casting fractured light across the long oak table. The room buzzed with quiet conversations, but beneath the polite chatter, I sensed a growing unease. Lucas sat beside me, his hand brushing mine under the table, a small but vital reassurance. Yet even as he squeezed my fingers, I caught the flicker of worry in his eyes, an unspoken question about the dark forces pressing in around us. Words felt heavier than usual, weighed down by the oppressive atmosphere that seemed to seep from the manor's very walls. I found myself withdrawing, the gulf between us growing despite our efforts. Our love, once a bright flame, flickered uncertainly against the encroaching darkness. When Lucas finally leaned in, his voice low and tender, "Alara, whatever comes, we face it together." I felt a fragile hope kindle in my chest. That night, sleep eluded me. I wandered the manor's labyrinthine halls until I reached the chapel, a sanctuary of cold stone and stained glass that bathed the room in fractured moonlight. I pressed my palm to the cool windowpane, watching the colors dance on the floor like shards of a broken dream. Around me, faint whispers stirred, like the sighs of brides long gone, their voices mingling with the rustling shadows. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over my fragments of past lives, of love and loss, betrayal and sacrifice. The looping fate that bound me to Thornwick Manor tightened its grip, but within that cruel cycle, I found a growing resolve. I would not be another victim. I would fight for Lucas, for myself, and for every soul trapped in this endless night. As the first drops of rain began to fall, tapping softly against the chapel's stained glass, I opened my eyes and whispered into the darkness, "Not this time, not again." The gathering storm outside was nothing compared to the tempest rising within me. And as the manor exhaled its ancient breath, I knew the coming days would test everything I held dear. But still, I held to the fragile hope that love, even when forbidden and shadowed by darkness, might just be strong enough to conquer fate itself. The night deepened, and the shadows danced around Thornwick Manor, waiting for the dawn that might never come. The chapel at Thornwick Manor was unlike any other room in the vast estate. Its cold stone walls, lined with ancient pews and crowned by a high vaulted ceiling, held a solemn beauty that simultaneously comforted and unsettled me. Candlelight flickered from wrought iron sconces, casting shadows that danced like ghosts along the stained glass windows. It was here, in this sacred and silent enclave, that I chose to bare my soul to Lucas. I waited for him near the altar, hands trembling slightly as I smoothed the delicate lace of my sleeves. The weight of the secret I carried pressed heavier than the chill in the air. When Lucas arrived, his quiet footsteps echoed softly, and he paused, sensing the tension that enveloped me. "Alara," he said gently, stepping closer, eyes searching mine. "What is it? You've seemed so distant these past days." I took a deep breath, the scent of beeswax and old stone filling my lungs, steadying my nerves. "Lucas, there's something I need to tell you, something about Thornwick, about me, and this wedding." He nodded, his expression open and patient, urging me to continue. "This manor," I began, voice barely above a whisper, "it's cursed. Every wedding here has ended in tragedy. Brides and grooms lost to heartbreak, betrayal, even death. And I think I'm the reason." His brow furrowed, confusion flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? I swallowed hard, memories flooding in visions of brides before me, faces etched in sorrow, all bearing a striking resemblance to my own. I am the reincarnation of every doomed bride this manor has ever held. It's as if my soul is trapped in this endless cycle of love and loss. A heavy silence settled between us, punctuated only by the soft crackling of candle flames. Lucas reached out, his hand warm as it found mine, grounding me. Ilara, I don't know what to say, but I believe you, and I believe in us. Whatever this curse is, we'll face it together. His words washed over me, a balm to my frayed spirit. For the first time since arriving at Thornwick, hope flickered within me, not a naive hope, but a fierce, determined one. We sat side by side on the cold stone bench, the chapel's stained glass windows casting fractured hues of ruby, sapphire, and emerald across our entwined hands. It was as if the manor itself was acknowledging our fragile bond, the colors a kaleidoscope of love and peril intertwined. Lucas squeezed my hand gently. Ilara, our love is forbidden by history, by fate, by the shadows of the past, but it's real, and that means it's worth fighting for. Tears pricked at my eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming strength in his conviction. I want to believe that we can break this cycle, I whispered. But what if the curse is too powerful? What if I'm doomed to fail? He rose, pulling me to my feet, his gaze unwavering. Then we faced that fate together. You're not alone anymore. The chapel's heavy wooden door creaked open as we prepared to leave, the cool night air greeting us like a breath of challenge. As the door closed softly behind, sealing our moment of confession and promise, a quiet determination settled within me. Whatever darkness awaited, I would not face it alone. Together, Lucas and I stepped forward into the unknown souls entwined against the looping fate of Thornwick Manor. The night outside was still, but inside me a storm was gathering. Yet beneath the dread, a fragile light burned. This was no longer just a wedding doomed to tragedy. It was the beginning of a battle for our love, our lives, and our very souls. And I was ready to fight. The manor was quieter than usual that night, the kind of silence that presses against your skin like the cold touch of marble. Thornwick Manor, draped in its Gothic elegance, seemed to hold its breath as the moon climbed high above, casting long silver shadows over the stone facade. I stood at the threshold of the garden, the air thick with the scent of nightshade, both beautiful and deadly, a fitting emblem for the night ahead. The flowers bloomed faintly under the moon's pale gaze, their petals almost luminescent in the darkness. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the delicate leaves, feeling a chill course through my veins. The garden was alive with whispered secrets, the rustle of leaves in the breeze sounding like faint voices, distant and sorrowful. Closing my eyes, I let the visions come. Suddenly, I was there clad in a gown not my own, standing beneath a grand archway forged from twisted iron and blooming nightshade. The air was thick with anticipation, but it was a heavy, suffocating weight. I saw the faces of those around me, smiles masking something darker. A cold dread settled in my chest as I realized I was reliving a memory not mine, yet intimately familiar. The ceremony unraveled quickly, whispers of betrayal, a gasp, the shattering of glass. I was a bride caught in a storm of heartbreak, condemned to the shadows of this haunted manor. The vision faded, leaving me trembling in the moonlight, the garden silent once more. I swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter on my tongue. Was this my fate? To walk these halls doomed, bound by a curse older than time itself? I had to believe otherwise. I had to believe that love or love could rewrite the story. Inside, The manor's grand hall was awash in candlelight, the flames flickering against the ornate walls, casting dancing shadows that seemed alive. Lucas was there, waiting for me, his eyes soft and steady. I found him near the fireplace, his hands warming a cup of tea, though the tremor in his fingers betrayed his calm facade. "Ilara," he said softly, standing as I approached. "Are you all right?" I hesitated, the weight of my visions pressing down. "I saw them again," I whispered. "The brides before me, their weddings ending in heartbreak, in tragedy. I don't know if I can escape this, Lucas." His gaze never wavered. "We'll face it together, whatever it takes." I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But the manor's shadows were long, and the night was deep. Later, I wandered the manor's corridors alone. The ancient floorboards creaked beneath my feet, each groan echoing like a lament. The scent of aged wood mingled with the ever-present nightshade, curling into the corners of my mind and stirring memories I couldn't place. Whispers brushed my ears, voices of past brides, their sorrow and hope tangled in the air. I paused before a portraiture young woman in a bridal gown, eyes haunted yet fierce. Was that me? Had I lived 1,000 lives, trapped in this cycle? Retreating to my chamber, I sought solace in preparation. My wedding dress hung heavy on the chair, a delicate laced gown that shimmered faintly in the candlelight. As I slipped it on and fastened the buttons, I caught a flicker of movement in the ornate mirror. My breath caught. The reflection shifted, not just my own face, but a sorrowful gaze trapped behind mine. A chill ran down my spine. The manor was watching, reminding me that the past was never far, but I was not helpless. I had Lucas, and I had my will. As the night deepened, so did my resolve. Tomorrow I would stand at the altar, not as a victim of fate, but as a woman ready to fight for her love and her future. The curse might have bound the brides before me, but I was not them. I was Elarand. I would rewrite our story. Outside, the wind rose, carrying the scent of nightshade and the whispered hopes of brides long gone. The manor seemed to exhale, its Gothic elegance both a prison and a promise. And as I closed my eyes, the final thought that lingered was one of fragile hope of love that could transcend even the darkest fate. Tomorrow was the day I would either break the cycle or fall into its shadow once more. But tonight I held on to the fragile light of dawn, ready to face whatever came with open eyes and a fearless heart. The eve of the wedding was upon us, and with it, the weight of every past, present, and future promise intertwined in the halls of Thornwick Manor. The night stretched on, endless and full of possibility, and I was ready to meet it head on. The evening air hung heavy with the scent of rain and damp stone as I paced slowly through the drawing room of Thornwick Manor. The flickering flames in the fireplace cast grotesque shadows that danced like tormented spirits along the ornate Gothic arches and faded tapestries. My heart pounded fiercely, each beat echoing the storm of emotions roiling within me. Tonight, I could no longer hold the silence that had settled between Lucas and me like a suffocating fog. He sat across from me in an old velvet armchair, his green eyes clouded with uncertainty. The soft crackle of the fire was the only sound until I finally broke the stillness. "Lucas," I began, my voice trembling despite my resolve, "I need to know what you're really thinking. What do you feel about all this, about the manor, the curse, us?" He looked away, jaw tightening, as thunder rumbled in the distance. The stained glass windows shimmered with streaks of rain, casting kaleidoscopic patterns that mingled with the shadows in the room. The storm outside seemed to mirror the tempest inside my chest. "I'm scared, Ilara," he admitted quietly, the vulnerability in his voice cutting through me like a blade. Scared of losing you, scared that this curse will tear us apart like it did those who came before. I want to believe we can break it, but sometimes I wonder if we're fighting a losing battle. His words were a bomb and a poison all at once. I wanted to reach across the space between us, to pull him close and promise that we would be different, that our love would be the one to shatter the cycle. Yet, the shadows of doubt had already begun to weave their insidious threads through my heart. I swallowed hard, forcing my fears into words. Have you ever thought that maybe I'm not who I think I am? That I'm just another iteration of the cursed brides bound to this place? Lucas's gaze met mine then, full of pain and confusion. I've wondered, every day. But I see you, Elara. Not the past, not the shadows. I see you, the woman I love. If that's enough to fight for, then I'm with you. Despite his reassurance, I could feel the tension knotting between us. The manor's oppressive atmosphere seemed to seep into every corner, whispering lies and sowing seeds of mistrust. Later, as the storm intensified, I found myself alone in the vast hallway, clutching a fragile, yellowed letter I'd discovered hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The ink was faded, the script elegant yet hurried. It spoke of secrets kept and betrayals endured goes of pain that felt all too familiar. My fingers trembled as I traced the words, my mind racing. Was this the proof that our fate was sealed? Or was there still a way to rewrite the story? Footsteps approached, slow and hesitant. Lucas appeared at the end of the corridor, his eyes searching mine. We don't have to be prisoners of this place, he said softly. But that means trusting each other completely. No more secrets. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and doubt, but for the first time I felt a sliver of hope. Maybe together we could face the shadows and emerge into the light. As I turned back toward the drawing room, the echo of my footsteps mingled with the distant, mournful whisper of the manor's curse, a reminder that the battle for our love had only just begun. The night stretched on, thick with unspoken fears and fragile promises. And somewhere, deep within the ancient walls, the shadows waited, waiting to see if this time the cycle would break. But as I lay awake, the question that haunted me most was not if the curse would end, but whether the love we fought so hard to protect could survive the shadows of doubt. The dawn would come soon enough, but until then, all I could do was hold on to the fragile thread of trust between us. Fragile yet fierce, like the nightshade bloom daring to thrive amidst the darkness. The day had dawned with a deceptive calm. The grey light filtering through heavy clouds, casting a muted glow over Thornwick Manor. The air was thick, laden with the scent of damp earth and blooming nightshade, a paradox of beauty and poison. Elara stood before the ornate mirror in her chamber, her reflection framed by the delicate lace of her gown. Her heart pounded, not with excitement, but with a familiar, chilling rhythm, one born from the countless lives she had lived within these walls. Outside, the manor hummed with preparation. Servants moved with swift precision, arranging flowers and lighting candles, while guests began to arrive, their whispered conversations bouncing off the cold stone corridors. Lucas stood by the grand staircase, his eyes scanning the crowd and then settling on Elira's door. When their eyes met, a silent reassurance passed between them. They had faced shadows before, but nothing like what today would bring. As the clock struck the hour, the guests gathered in the grand hall beneath the towering arch draped in nightshade blooms. The Gothic elegance of Thornwick Manor was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, their glow softened by the flickering candlelight. Yet, An undercurrent of unease rippled through the air, a tension that tightened with each breath. Alara stepped forward, her hand clutching the bouquet of nightshade, its dark petals a symbol of the curse she was determined to break. Lucas took her hand, their fingers intertwining firmly, a tether against the encroaching darkness. The caretaker stood silently to the side, his gaze sharp and knowing. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice echoing softly, when suddenly the candle sputtered and the temperature plummeted. A cold wind rushed through the hall, extinguishing flames and sending a shiver through the assembled guests. The shadows along the walls lengthened and twisted, taking shapes that whispered of pain and loss. A spectral wail pierced the silence, chilling the blood. The chandeliers swayed violently, casting fractured light that danced like phantoms. Guests gasped, clutching at one another as unseen forces seemed to claw at the very fabric of reality. Alara's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain steady, recalling the lessons of her past lives, each doomed bride who had preceded her, each tragic ending that had taught her resilience. "Lucas," she whispered fiercely, "hold on to me. We can face this together." Lucas nodded, his grip tightening. "I'm right here." The darkness pressed closer, a suffocating weight of despair and anger. Alara closed her eyes, summoning every shard of strength she possessed. She pictured the faces of the brides she had been Isolde, the woman in the portrait, the others whose names were lost to time but whose suffering was etched into her soul. Their pain was a chain, but it was also a guide. "No more," Alara breathed, stepping forward, her voice rising in a steady chant taught to her by the caretaker. The ancient words wove through the chaos, a fragile thread of light in the storm. The nightshade bouquet in her hands seemed to pulse, the dark petals glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The caretaker joined her, his voice deep and resonant, the incantation growing in power. The shadows hesitated, then recoiled as if burned by their own darkness. The hall stilled, the chill ebbing away, replaced by a tentative warmth. The guests exhaled collectively, their fear subsiding but their eyes wide with awe. Alara opened her eyes and met Lucas's gaze. "It's not over," she said quietly, "but we've taken the first step." The caretaker nodded solemnly. "The curse is strong, but your love is stronger." For now, as the ceremony resumed, the manor seemed to breathe once more, its gothic grandeur shadowed by the memory of the battle just fought. Alara knew the curse would test them again, but today they had defied fate, together, and yet, as the final vows were spoken, a faint whisper curled through the air, a reminder that Thornwick Manor's story was far from finished. The nightshade flowers outside bloomed quietly, their dark beauty a testament to the fragile balance between love and darkness. Alara squeezed Lucas's hand, her heart fierce and hopeful, ready to face whatever shadows awaited in the chapters yet to unfold. The night air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and the subtle, poisonous sweetness of nightshade flowers blooming under the pale moonlight. Alara's heart pounded fiercely as she stood in the manor's secret garden. The place she had come to believe held the key to breaking the endless cycle of tragedy that had chained her soul for generations. The delicate petals, dark purple and velvety, shimmered faintly with a spectral glow that seemed almost otherworldly in the silver light. Around her, the ancient relics-worn pieces of jewelry, faded letters, and a cracked locket lay arranged in a circle, their presence grounding her in the history she was desperate to rewrite. Lucas's steady hand found hers, his fingers cold but reassuring. His gaze met hers, unwavering and full of love, a beacon of warmth in the chilling night. "We're in this together, Alara," he whispered, his voice a low promise that sent a fresh surge of courage through her veins. The caretaker stepped forward from the shadows, his dark robes rustling softly. His face was lined with age and secrets, eyes gleaming with knowledge that only centuries could bestow. "The time has come," he intoned solemnly, his voice a deep cadence that seemed to command the very air around them. "You must call upon the past and face the darkness within if you wish to be free." Ilara nodded, swallowing the tremor of fear that stirred in her chest. She bent to cradle the nightshade bloom. Its poison, a paradoxical symbol of death and beauty intertwined, much like the manor itself and her fate. As she placed it at the center of the relics, a hush fell over the garden, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The caretaker began to chant, his words ancient and melodic, weaving a tapestry of sound that seemed to pulse with the manor's heartbeat. Shadows flickered and danced across the stone walls, and Ilara felt the veil between past and present thin. Images flashed before her eyes, glimpses of brides long gone, their faces etched with sorrow and hope, their love stories frozen in time yet endlessly replaying. Lucas squeezed her hand, anchoring her in the moment. "You're stronger than the curse, Ilara. We'll break this together." The nightshade petals trembled, stirred by a sudden gust of wind that swept through the garden like a whispered warning. Illyra's breath hitched as warmth and cold collided within her, searing pain interlaced with a strange comfort. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This was no longer just about the past. It was about claiming her own future. With steady hands, she traced the air above the bloom, reciting the words the caretaker had taught her, plea, a command, a prayer. The relics began to glow faintly, their light intertwining with the spectral shimmer of the nightshade. The garden was bathed in an ethereal radiance, shadows recoiling as if banished by an unseen force. Time seemed to stretch, each heartbeat a drum in the silence. Ilara's voice faltered, then steadied. Lucas's presence was her anchor. The ritual reached its crescendo as the glow intensified, the manor itself seeming to hold its breath. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light dimmed, the nightshade's glow fading into the soft luminescence of dawn's first light. The oppressive weight that had long clung to Thornwick Manor lifted, if only slightly, and Ilara felt a fragile thread of hope unfurl within her soul. Lucas pulled her close, whispering, "Whatever happens next, we face it together." Ilara nodded against his chest, the echo of the past still whispering in her mind but no longer defining her. The cycle might not yet be fully broken, but for the first time she believed the future could be theirs to write. As the sun rose, casting golden light over the garden, a faint breeze stirred the nightshade flowers, carrying with it the promise of renewal. Illyra's journey was far from over, but tonight she had taken the first, bold step toward freedom. The manor's shadows lingered, but with them a new dawn beckoned her. Dawn Ilara was determined to embrace. The air hung heavy in Thornwick Manor, thick with a silence that pressed against my chest like a weight. The violent storm of supernatural chaos had finally passed, the frantic energies dissipating into the shadows where they belonged. Yet the manor itself seemed unchanged, its Gothic spires and ornate windows staring down at us with the same indifferent coldness, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting. I sat on the faded velvet settee in the drawing room, the pale flicker of candlelight dancing across the intricate carvings and casting long, quivering shadows on the walls. The scent of extinguished incense lingered faintly, mingling with the sharp, lingering aroma of nightshade that clung stubbornly to the air. My fingers traced the delicate lace of my wedding gown, now tarnished and stained from the ritual we had performed just hours before. The nightshade bloom lay shattered nearby, its petals scattered like fragments of a broken promise. Lucas stood silently beside me, his hand reaching out slowly, hesitating before our fingers entwined with a quiet strength that steadied me. His hazel eyes searched mine, reflecting the storm of emotions that we both struggled to voice: relief, exhaustion, fear, and a fragile thread of hope. "Is it really over?" Lucas whispered, his voice breaking the suffocating silence. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of 1,000 past lives settle upon my shoulders. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely more than a breath. "But I feel lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, this time it's different." The caretaker emerged from the shadows of the hallway, his face etched with the lines of centuries-long sorrow and wisdom. His eyes, sharp and discerning, lingered on us both with an unreadable expression. Without words, he seemed to acknowledge the tentative victory, yet the heaviness in his gaze suggested that the manor's curse might yet whisper in the dark. That night, as the manor's ancient timbers creaked and sighed with the wind, I lay awake, staring at the intricate patterns of the ceiling, wondering if the threads of fate had finally loosened enough for me to breathe freely. The memories of Isolde and all the brides before me pressed close like ghosts, but for the first time, they felt less like shackles and more like warnings, echoes from the past urging me to hold on. Lucas's steady presence beside me was a beacon in the oppressive gloom. Our love, once forbidden and fraught with danger, now felt like the only true light in the suffocating darkness of Thornwick. We spoke in hushed tones about the future, uncertain, yes, but ours to shape. Yet the manor remained silent and watchful, its Gothic elegance a reminder that this battle was far from over. Days passed in a blur of quiet moments and lingering doubts. The guests who had come for our wedding had long since departed, leaving behind only the cold halls and the faint echoes of laughter and tears. I wandered the shadowed corridors, tracing my fingers along the cold stone walls, searching for some sign that the curse's hold was truly broken. The portraits of past brides watched silently, their eyes filled with stories of heartbreak and sacrifice, and I wondered if one day my own story would join theirs, or if this time I could rewrite the ending. In the garden, the nightshade flowers had wilted, their dark beauty fading under the pale sun. Yet, in their place, small shoots of green began to push through the soil, fragile hints of renewal. I knelt in the earth, my hands trembling as I touched the new growth. "Maybe," I whispered to the wind, "this is the beginning." Lucas found me there, his voice soft and certain. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." And as twilight fell once more over Thornwick Manor, painting the sky in bruised purples and deep blues, I allowed myself to believe that love, our love, could endure even the darkest curses. But deep inside, a part of me remained watchful, knowing that the silence was not peace, and that the manor's shadows still held secrets yet to be uncovered. The night stretched on, rich with the scent of damp earth and fading blooms, as I prepared to confront whatever fate still awaited us. Our story was far from finished, but for the first time I felt ready to write the next chapter, not as a doomed bride caught in a looping curse, but as a woman determined to break free. And so Thornwick Manor waited, its Gothic elegance both a prison and a promise. As the quiet aftermath settled like a shroud, the calm before the storm yet to come. But tomorrow, I vowed, would be different. The nightshade garden breathed softly under the moon's gentle gaze as I stepped between the heavy, fragrant blossoms. Their dark purple petals seemed to drink the midnight air, each bloom a whisper of death and beauty entwined. Yet tonight the garden felt different, less a harbinger of doom and more a sanctuary of fragile peace. I paused beneath the towering arch of ivy, the cool mist curling around my ankles. A breeze stirred, carrying with it a chorus of whispers, soft voices threaded through the rustling leaves. At first, I thought it was merely the wind, but then I saw them, glimmers of light, ghostly and tender, taking the shapes of brides long gone, their faces pale yet serene. They surrounded me, the echoes of past lives, their gowns shimmering like spilled moonlight. I recognized their eyes windows of sorrow and love, pain and hope. But unlike before, their presence did not fill me with dread. Instead, I felt a warmth rising, a gentle urging that the endless cycle might finally bend towards something new. "Ilara," a voice whispered, delicate as the night air, "you carry us all, but you are more than our fate." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and courage. "I want to believe that," I replied aloud, though the words trembled on my lips. A soft hand brushed my cheek, a touch both real and spectral, and I felt the weight of every past sorrow lift just a little. The curse that had haunted Thornwick for centuries was no longer a shackle but a challenge, a call to break the chains. Later, in the manor's grand library, the scent of aged paper and leather-bound volumes wrapped around Lucas and me as we bent over ancient tomes and faded maps. His fingers grazed mine, a spark of warmth that grounded me in the present. "We can rewrite this story," he said quietly, eyes steady and filled with unwavering faith. I nodded, drawing strength from his belief. The past brides, the curse, the tragic loops, they were threads in a tapestry we could unravel and reweave. Together, as the night deepened, a sudden breeze swept through the corridors, carrying with it distant laughter and whispered names. I closed my eyes and listened, feeling the past bidding its farewell, a soft release into the ether. By dawn, we stood side by side on the veranda, the first light painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. The manor's Gothic spires cast long shadows, but ahead stretched a horizon unbound by darkness. "What do you see?" Lucas asked. I smiled, breath warm in the cool morning air. "A future where love outshines fate's cruel designs, where we choose our own path." He squeezed my hand gently. "Then let's take that step together." In that moment, the whispers of tomorrow carried a promise, fragile but unbreakable hope that even in the shadow of Thornwick Manor, love could bloom eternal. And so began our new chapter, one forged not from the tragedies of the past, but from the enduring courage to dream beyond them. The room was cloaked in shadows, save for the soft, golden glow emanating from the fireplace where Ilara sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Across from her, the caretaker, an enigmatic figure whose presence had grown increasingly significant, settled into his worn armchair, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. The manor's ancient timbers groaned softly, as if leaning in to listen to the story about to be told. "You deserve to know," the caretaker began, his voice low and deliberate, carrying the weight of decades. "The truth behind Thornwick's curse is deeper than the whispered legends. It was born not of malice, but of love that dared to defy the rigid chains of its time." Ilara's heart quickened. She leaned forward slightly, eager to grasp anything that might illuminate the dark fog enveloping her fate. "Long ago," he continued, "before any bride had walked these halls, there lived a young woman named Annalise and a man named Gabriel. Their love was pure but forbidden. She was the daughter of the manor's lord, raised in gilded privilege. He, a commoner with a gentle spirit and fierce loyalty. He reached beside him, retrieving a faded, leather-bound journal from a nearby table. The brittle cover bore the scars of age, the edges frayed and delicate. Opening it carefully, he revealed pages filled with delicate ink, sketches, portraits of Annalise and Gabriel, their faces etched with longing and defiance. Annalise kept this diary, the caretaker explained, chronicling their secret meetings in the Nightshade garden, the very one you discovered. Their love blossomed beneath those poisonous blooms, beautiful yet dangerous. Alara traced the images with her eyes, feeling an ache that transcended centuries. The garden had always felt like a place of paradox, death, and life entwined. Now she understood why. But the world was unforgiving, he said, voice thickening. The lord of the manor, the woman's own father, discovered their secret. In a fit of rage and fear for his family's honor, he forbade their union, threatening exile and disgrace. Outside, thunder rolled, and the rain lashed at the manor's tall windows, the storm mirroring the turmoil of the tale. One fateful night, the caretaker whispered, as if afraid the walls themselves might hear. Annalise and Gabriel planned to escape, to defy the fate forced upon them. But betrayal lurked close. A trusted servant, loyal to the Lord, revealed their plan. The lovers were separated violently, their hearts shattered. Alara swallowed hard as the caretaker paused, the weight of sorrow hanging thick in the air. Annalise's grief was so profound it stained this manor. Her spirit, bound by heartbreak and injustice, refused to rest. The caretaker's gaze met Elaras, steady and grave. You, Elaras, carry her soul within you. The cycle of tragedy repeats because the pain remains unresolved. Tears pricked Ilara's eyes, but beneath the sadness stirred something fiercer, determination burning hotter than the hearth's flames. Is there a way to end it? She asked, voice trembling yet resolute. He nodded slowly. To break the curse, you must embrace the love that was denied. Confront the shadows of the past, and rewrite the ending that was stolen from Annalise and Gabriel. It will not be easy, and the path is fraught with peril. But love true, love has power beyond fate's cruel designs. The storm outside began to subside, the first soft light of dawn brushing the edges of the darkened sky. Alara felt the weight of centuries lift slightly, replaced by a newfound clarity. Thank you, she whispered, the words carrying a promise as much as gratitude. The caretaker's eyes softened. You are not alone, Alara. Thornwick's legacy is yours to shape. As the morning light filled the room, Alara rose, the echoes of the caretaker's tale settling in her heart like a solemn hymn. The journey ahead was daunting, but for the first time, she believed she might rewrite the story not just for herself and Lucas, but for all the lost lovers bound to this place. And with that, the first step toward breaking the curse had been taken. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew and earth as Alara stepped out onto the grand stone steps of Thornwick Manor. The manor, once a looming spectre of despair and faded grandeur, now caught the tender morning light in a way that softened its jagged edges and shadowed corners. The Gothic spires and ornate ironwork, which had once whispered of tragedy, now seemed to pulse with a quiet promise. Beside her, Lucas squeezed her hand gently, his hazel eyes reflecting the golden hues of dawn. It feels different today, he said softly, his voice tinged with wonder and cautious hope. Alara nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and resolve. It does, she replied, as if the manor itself is breathing again. Together they moved forward, their footsteps echoing softly on the stone as they crossed the threshold into the grand hall. Dust hung in the air, catching the sunlight in lazy motes that danced around the towering columns and faded tapestries. The air still carried the weight of countless memories, but Ilara was determined to reshape those memories, to reclaim this place. Lucas reached for the heavy velvet drapes that lined the windows, their fabric moth-eaten and dulled by time. With careful hands, he pulled them back, letting shafts of sunlight flood the room. The light revealed intricate woodwork hidden beneath layers of grime, delicate carvings of roses and vines that intertwined like the love Ilara now believed could break the manor's ancient curse. Ilara ran her fingers across the worn banister of the grand staircase, feeling the grooves worn smooth by generations. "This manor has seen so much pain," she whispered, "but it's also seen love." Lucas smiled, stepping closer, "And it will see more, our love." Their days were filled with a steady rhythm of restoration. They scrubbed and polished, painted and repaired, each act a small rebellion against the darkness that had long claimed Thornwick. Ilara found herself drawn to the garden, where the earth was soft and the air rich with the promise of renewal. The nightshade flowers, once symbols of death and despair, now took on a new meaning in her hands. Kneeling in the damp soil, Ilara planted the nightshade alongside fresh rose bushes Lucas had nurtured from seedlings. The scent of earth and blossoms mingled in the air, a fragrant testament to their determination to rewrite the manor's story. As she worked, memories of past lives flickered through her mind, brides lost to the curse, their stories etched in sorrow. But this time, Ilara was not alone. Lucas was here, a living, breathing anchor to hope and love. Even the caretaker, a figure once shrouded in mystery and guarded knowledge, began to soften in their presence. He offered quiet assistance and occasional words of encouragement, his sharp eyes watching the manor come alive in new ways. "The manor recognizes when its story is changing," he said one afternoon, his voice low but steady. "It's a rare thing, but love has the power to do it." As twilight descended, the manor was transformed. Warm lights flickered through the windows, casting a soft glow that chased away lingering shadows. Ilara and Lucas sat side by side on the veranda, their silhouettes etched against the deepening purple sky. The air was cool and calming, filled with the quiet sounds of night, rustling leaves, distant songbirds settling in for rest, and the gentle beating of their own hearts. "A new dawn," Lucas murmured, leaning close to Ilara. "For us, for Thornwick." Ilara smiled, her eyes reflecting the last light of day. "For the first time, I believe it." But beneath their peaceful moment, a faint chill lingered, a whisper of the past that refused to be forgotten. The manor's history was long and tangled, and though the curse's grip was loosening, it was not yet fully broken. Ilara knew the road ahead would not be without challenge, but with Lucas by her side and the manor slowly healing, hope was a flame they would protect fiercely. As night deepened, Ilara stood and gazed up at the stars, each one a spark of light against the endless dark. She whispered a promise to the manor, to the brides who had come before her, and to the future she was determined to claim. A future where love would triumph over fate's cruel loops, where Thornwick Manor would finally breathe freely, and where she and Lucas could write their own story together. And so, beneath the ancient stones and blooming flowers, a new chapter began, fragile, beautiful, and fiercely alive. But as the manor settled into its newfound peace, a question hung in the still air. Could this dawn truly break the cycle, or was fate's shadow still waiting just beyond the light? The answer, Ilara knew, would come with the rising sun. The morning sun filtered softly through the tall, mullioned windows of Thornwick Manor, casting long beams of light across the polished wooden floors. Alara stood in the great hall, her eyes tracing the once familiar outlines of the Gothic arches and ornate carvings that had always felt less like a home and more like a cage. Yet today, the shadows seemed less oppressive, the air lighter, as if the manor itself was taking a deep, calming breath. She moved slowly, running her fingers along the ancient banister, feeling the smooth wood beneath her touch. The silence of the manor was different, no longer a heavy weight pressing down on her chest, but a gentle hush that invited rather than forbade. Ilara's heart fluttered with tentative hope. For so long, Thornwick had been the echo chamber of tragic love stories, her own included. But now, those echoes were fading, replaced by something new and fragile, the possibility of freedom. Lucas appeared at the doorway, his presence a warm anchor in the shifting atmosphere. His eyes met hers, and a small, reassuring smile curved his lips. "It's a new day, Ilara," he said softly, stepping closer. "The manor feels different, doesn't it?" She nodded, the corners of her mouth lifting in return. "It does, I think. Maybe the curse is finally losing its hold." They walked together through the corridors, the sunlight chasing away lingering shadows. Ilara noticed the walls seemed to breathe with renewed life, the faded tapestries brightening, the portraits of past brides no longer gazing at her with sorrowful eyes, but with a serene acceptance. It was as if Thornwick itself was healing alongside her. Later, they ventured into the secret garden where nightshade flowers bloomed in quiet abundance. The dark purple petals glistened with morning dew, their delicate beauty a reminder of love's complex dance with death and rebirth. Ilara reached out to touch a blossom, the coolness of the petals grounding her in the present. Lucas took her hand in his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "This garden," Ilara whispered, "it's no longer a symbol of curse or despair. It's become a place of hope." Lucas squeezed her hand gently, just like us. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, all the weight of centuries seemed to lift. The future stretched before them, unmarked and inviting. Back in her room, Ilara settled by the window with her journal, the pages filling steadily with reflections and plans. The voices of her past lives, the brides who had suffered here were distant now, like faint whispers on the wind. Instead, she heard her own voice, strong and clear, weaving a new narrative. She wrote of love without fear, of breaking chains forged long ago, and of the courage it took to claim happiness. Each word was a step away from shadow and toward light. As dusk fell, a gentle breeze stirred the curtains, carrying with it the scent of nightshade and fresh earth. Ilara and Lucas stood side by side, looking out across the estate bathed in golden hues. The Gothic silhouettes of the manor softened against the twilight sky, no longer symbols of doom but of resilience. "We've come so far," Lucas murmured, his voice filled with awe. Ilara leaned into him, her heart swelling with love and quiet certainty. "And we're just beginning." The manor, once a prison of looping fate, now stood as a testament to the power of love to break even the darkest curses. The echoes of tragedy were fading, replaced by the promise of tomorrow. But beneath the calm surface, a question lingered, unspoken yet persistent. Could their love truly endure beyond Thornwick's shadows, or would the past find a way to reclaim them? For now, though, Ilara chose hope, embracing the dawn of a new legacy with Lucas by her side. The nightshade garden whispered softly in the growing darkness, its blooms a quiet witness to a love reborn. The moon hung low and luminous over Thornwick Manor, casting a silver light that danced upon the petals of the nightshade flowers blooming in the secret garden. Ilara stepped carefully onto the soft earth, her white gown whispering beneath her as she moved. The garden, once a place steeped in shadows and sorrow, now shimmered with an ethereal glow, the nocturnal blossoms exuding a faint, enchanting fragrance that mingled with the cool night air. Around her, the Gothic spires of the manor loomed silently, their silhouettes softened by the moonlight, as if watching over her with a gentler gaze than before. Lucas joined her with quiet footsteps, his dark suit a stark but comforting contrast against the pale light. His eyes met hers, and in them Alara saw not fear, but an unwavering resolve that mirrored her own. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, the weight of their shared history pressing gently but persistently on their hearts. "Alara," Lucas whispered, reaching out to take her hand. His touch was warm and steady, grounding her in the moment. "No matter what this manor has tried to do, no matter the tragedies it's witnessed, I choose you, here, now, and always." Ilara's breath caught, her heart swelling with a fierce mixture of hope and defiance. "And I choose you, Lucas," she replied, her voice trembling but resolute. "We will not be prisoners of this curse. Together we will rewrite our story." Their fingers intertwined, the solidity of their connection a beacon of light against the darkness that had long plagued Thornwick. The nightshade flowers around them seemed to pulse, their violet hues deepening as if acknowledging the sacredness of the moment. The garden, once a symbol of death and despair, transformed under the weight of their vows into a sanctuary of beauty and promise. Alara felt the manor's oppressive shadows retreat, the whispers of past brides no longer haunting but harmonizing with the gentle rustle of leaves. The night air carried the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the decay that had once marked this place. It was as though the very soul of Thornwick was awakening, stirred by the courage and love of two souls determined to break free. They moved closer, their foreheads resting together beneath the moon's watchful eye. "No matter what comes," Lucas murmured, "we face it as one." Alara nodded, tears glistening like stars in her eyes. Forever, their lips met in a kiss that was both a promise and a declaration, a seal on the new path they had chosen. Around them, the nightshade blossoms shimmered faintly, alive with the magic of hope and renewal. In that moment, the past's heavy chains loosened, and the future stretched before them unknown, uncertain but theirs to shape. Together, beneath the moonlight and among the flowers that had long been a symbol of tragedy, Alara and Lucas dared to dream of a love that could conquer fate itself. As the night deepened, the garden seemed to breathe with life anew, the Gothic elegance of Thornwick Manor softened by the light of their shared promise. And though the shadows of the past lingered faintly at the edges, they no longer held dominion over the hearts of those who dared to stand against them. Alara looked up once more at the moon, her voice barely a whisper carried on the wind. "This is our beginning." And with that, the Nightshade Garden, once a place of sorrow, became a sanctuary of hope, forever marked by a love that refused to be bound by the ghosts of yesterday. But as the moon sailed higher, a soft rustle among the leaves hinted that while promises were made, the true test of their strength was yet to come. The air in Thornwick Manor felt unusually still that evening, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I had spent hours wandering the gallery, my fingers tracing the edges of old tapestries, each thread woven with the sorrow and passion of centuries. The flickering candlelight barely pushed back the shadows, but it was enough to reveal the faded grandeur of the manor's walls. Something tugged at me, a quiet insistence, urging me to look deeper. I reached up, my hands trembling slightly, and grasped the corner of a heavy tapestry embroidered with ivy and roses. With a soft rustle, I drew it aside, revealing the surface of a large, ornate frame. The portrait beneath was covered in a thin layer of dust, but the image was unmistakable. There we were, Lucas and I, painted with a timeless grace, our faces serene and filled with a peace I had long yearned for. The artist had captured not just our likenesses, but the essence of a love that had finally transcended the shadows. The moonlight streaming through the stained glass window cast a gentle glow over the painting, illuminating the nightshade flowers entwined at our feet. No longer dark and foreboding, the blossoms seemed to pulse with quiet life, their deep purple hues vibrant against the muted background. I reached out, my fingers barely brushing the glass as a wave of emotion swelled inside me, a mixture of disbelief, relief, and something I could only describe as hope. Elara, Lucas's voice broke the silence, low and steady behind me. I turned to find him standing close, his hands slipping into mine with all the certainty of the man who had stood by me through every trial. His eyes met mine, reflecting the same mixture of wonder and cautious optimism. "It's real, we did this." I nodded, unable to speak, as the weight of the moment settled over us. The portraits of past brides, their eyes filled with despair and longing, seemed to watch silently from their frames, as if acknowledging their stories had finally found an end. The curse that had gripped Thornwick Manor for centuries was no longer an unbreakable chain, but a story rewritten by our love. The caretaker appeared quietly in the doorway, his presence almost ethereal. His lined face softened in a rare smile, and he inclined his head toward the portrait. "It has waited a long time for this," he said softly, "for the curse to be lifted, for the past to be honored and released." I looked back at the painting, then at Lucas, feeling the manor's oppressive atmosphere lighten. The shadows that had haunted us now seemed less threatening, as if the house itself was breathing a sigh of relief. "We can finally move forward," I whispered. Outside, the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in delicate hues of pink and gold. Lucas and I stood by the open window, the cool morning breeze carrying the scent of nightshade from the garden below. But this time, the fragrance was different, no longer a symbol of death, it was a promise of renewal. Hand in hand, we faced the future together, the twisted fate that had bound us finally unraveled. Our love had endured the darkest nights and emerged into the lighter testament to the power of hope, resilience, and the courage to defy destiny. As the manor's ancient walls seemed to shimmer with newfound life, I knew this was not just an ending, but a beginning. Thornwick's story, once one of sorrow, would now be remembered as the place where love conquered even the darkest of curses. And as I stood there, gazing at the last portrait, the last piece of a puzzle, finally complete, he felt an unshakable certainty. This was our forever, painted in twilight hues but bathed in the dawn's gentle glow. But even as the morning light grew stronger, a small whisper of wind stirred the curtains, carrying with it a question that lingered in my heart. Could love truly rewrite the past, or was this peace merely the calm before another storm? For now, though I chose to believe in the promise before me, in the portrait that told a story of redemption, and in the man beside me who had never stopped fighting for us, together we would face whatever came next. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of Thornwick Manor, our love took its final stand, eternal, unbroken, and free. The heavy wooden door of Thornwick Manor groaned under my touch as I slid the key into the ancient lock. The metal was cold and worn, its grooves a testament to the countless times it had kept secrets and held captive the weight of sorrow that had seeped into these walls for centuries. I hesitated for a heartbeat, my fingers trembling slightly, before turning it decisively. The lock clicked open, a sound that echoed through the grand hall like a whispered farewell. Lucas stood beside me, his hand warm as he squeezed mine, grounding me in the present, the moment where past and future converged. The manor, with all its Gothic elegance and shadowed memories, had been our battleground, our prison, but also the crucible in which our love had been forged. Now it was time to leave. I took a slow, deliberate step inside, letting my gaze drift along the towering arches and intricate carvings that had both captivated and haunted me since the day I arrived. The flickering twilight cast long, wavering shadows that danced across the walls, revealing glimpses of a history both beautiful and tragic. I ran my fingers along the cold banister of the grand staircase, feeling the faint pulse of the lives entwined with this place-siege bride who had walked these halls before me. Each moment of love and loss etched into the very grain of the wood. "It's hard to believe this is the last time we'll stand here," Lucas murmured, his voice low and steady. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. It feels like closing a chapter that's been written over and over, but this time, we're the ones holding the pen. Together, we moved through the rooms, gathering the last of our belongings. In the attic, dust motes floated lazily in the shafts of fading light, settling on forgotten trunks and faded photographs. As we folded the delicate lace of my wedding dress, once a symbol of doom, now a relic of my past, I felt a strange sense of release. The dress no longer defined me. I had rewritten my story. Lucas smiled gently, catching my eye. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." His words were a balm to my soul, a promise against the shadows that had clung to us for so long. We moved quietly, the rustle of fabric and the soft creak of floorboards the only sounds in the stillness. Each step felt lighter than the last, as though the manor itself was loosening its grip, allowing us to slip free. As we descended the staircase one final time, a figure appeared in the doorway, the caretaker. His eyes, sharp and timeless, held a mixture of sadness and understanding. Without a word, he nodded once, a silent blessing for the journey ahead. I returned the gesture, feeling the weight of centuries lift from my shoulders. The caretaker's presence was a reminder that some stories never truly end, they simply evolve. Outside, the sky was a canvas of twilight-hued purples, melting into golds, shadows stretching toward the horizon. The silhouette of Thornwick Manor loomed behind us, imposing yet diminished, a monument to the past we were finally leaving behind. I took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling my lungs with the promise of new beginnings. Lucas squeezed my hand, his smile steady and sure. "Ready?" he asked softly. I nodded, stepping forward with him, away from the manor's lingering shadows and into the vast, unfolding unknown. The future was ours to shape, no longer bound by fate's cruel cycles, but guided by the strength of our love. As the manor's heavy door closed behind us with a resounding thud, I felt a quiet peace settle over my heart. Thornwick would always be part of me, a chapter of pain and passion woven into my soul. But now it was time to write the story we chose, one of hope, freedom, and a love that refused to be broken. The night air whispered softly around us, carrying the echoes of the past but no longer chaining us to it. Together, we walked into the gathering darkness, where the first stars began to glimmer, small beacons of light illuminating the path ahead. And in that twilight, I dared to believe in ever after. The morning sun spilled gentle gold across the rolling hills, casting long, warm rays over the quaint cottage that Lucas and I had chosen as our new beginning. The manor, Thornwick, with all its shadows and whispered curses, was now a distant memory, a chapter closed but not forgotten. Standing side by side on the porch, our hands intertwined, I felt a steady pulse of hope bloom within me, stronger than any fear that had ever gripped my heart. It's perfect, Lucas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. A fresh start for us. I nodded, the corners of my lips lifting into a smile that felt genuine and unburdened for the first time in months. A new legacy, I murmured, echoing the promise we both silently made to rewrite the story that had haunted my soul across lifetimes. Inside, the sunlight poured through wide windows, illuminating soft cream walls and wooden floors that creaked with gentle familiarity. Boxes labeled with hastily scribbled words kitchen. Books, memories were scattered about, each holding pieces of our past and hopes for the future. As we unpacked together, laughter filled the air, a sound so simple yet so profound after the heavy silence that had once enveloped me. "Do you think we can really leave it all behind?" Lucas asked, holding up a framed photograph of us beneath the nightshade blooms at Thornwick. I took the frame from his hands, tracing the delicate petals with a finger. "We carry Thornwick with us, but we don't have to be prisoners to it. The curse was never just about the manor. It was about fear, doubt, and the stories we tell ourselves. Now we write our own." That evening, as the golden hues of the sun softened into twilight, I found myself seated by the window, journal in lap. The pen moved almost effortlessly across the crisp pages as I poured out the days, the nights, the fears that had once gripped me, and the love that had healed me. Each word was a thread weaving a new tapestry, one threaded not with sorrow but with strength. Lucas joined me quietly, sitting close, his presence a quiet anchor. "You're incredible," he said softly, "to face all that you have and still choose hope." I smiled, closing the journal. "We're incredible. Together, we can be anything." Outside, the stars began to twinkle, shimmering like distant lanterns guiding us forward. The past brides of Thornwick may have been trapped in their looping fates, but I was not them. I was Alara, a woman reborn through love's defiance and courage. Days turned into weeks, and soon we found ourselves in the garden, dirt beneath our nails and sun on our faces, planting a young tree. Its fragile branches reached skyward, a living testament to growth, healing, and the future we would nurture side by side. "Two new roots," Lucas said, pressing the last handful of earth around the sapling. "Two new roots," I echoed, the words settling deep within me. As the seasons would change, so would we, but the legacy we created, born from the ashes of despair, would stand tall, a beacon of hope for all who dared to believe in love's transformative power. Thornwick's shadows may linger in memory, but they no longer held dominion over us. Together, we stepped into the light, hearts entwined, ready to embrace the infinite possibilities of our new legacy. The wind was cool and gentle as it swept through the ancient trees surrounding Thornwick Manor, carrying with it the faintest of whispers, voices that had lingered here for centuries, stories etched into the stones and timber of the sprawling estate. Standing on the balcony that overlooked the overgrown gardens, I closed my eyes and let the murmurs wash over me. I could almost hear the soft laughter of brides long gone, the sighs of lost lovers, the hushed prayers whispered in the chapel shadows. The twilight sky was a canvas of purple and gold, the sun dipping below the horizon in a blaze of fading light. Nightshade flowers bloomed nearby, their dark petals curling delicately. Exquisite yet dangerous, a perfect embodiment of Thornwick itself. Their scent mingled with the fragrant jasmine that climbed the wrought iron railings, creating an intoxicating blend of beauty and melancholy. I felt Lucas's presence behind me, steady and warm. His hand found mine, fingers entwining with a gentle strength that had become my anchor through this impossible journey. "The whispers," he murmured, voice low and reverent, "they're still here, aren't they? I nodded, opening my eyes to meet his gaze. They are, but they don't frighten me anymore. The manor had been a prison for my soul, a labyrinth of pain and repetition, but now it felt more like a memory, a bittersweet echo rather than a binding chain. The stories of the past, once so heavy and suffocating, had become threads woven into the fabric of who I was, not shackles that held me captive. Together we moved inside, stepping through the grand oak doors of the great hall. The flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows over the Gothic carvings and faded tapestries that chronicled Thornwick's tragic history. Each detail spoke of sorrow and passion, betrayal and loss, but also resilience. As we closed the doors behind us, I felt a quiet resolve settle within my chest. This was our farewell to the curse, a conscious choice to honor the past but not be ruled by it. In the silence, I traced my fingers over the intricate woodwork, feeling the cold, smooth surface beneath my touch. The manor's Gothic elegance was hauntingly beautiful, a testament to love's endurance, even in darkness. Yet, the weight that had once pressed down on me was lifting, replaced by a fragile hope. Later, we walked through the garden where nightshade bloomed in shadowed clusters. The petals were cool and velvety under my fingertips, a vivid reminder of the duality that had defined my existence here: love and death, beauty and pain, hope and despair. I inhaled deeply, the scent filling my lungs and stirring memories, not just of this life, but of the countless lives that had come before. "Do you feel it?" I asked Lucas softly. "The magic that still lingers." He smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. "I feel it in you." The road away from Thornwick was quiet beneath our feet. As we walked hand in hand, the manor's silhouette faded into the distance. But the whispers followed, faint, almost imperceptible, like a lullaby carried on the wind. They were no longer chains, but songs of love's enduring imprint, reminders that though fate had tried to bind me, it could never break my spirit. I glanced at Lucas, his eyes reflecting the last light of day, and felt a surge of gratitude and determination. Our story, once shadowed by tragedy, was now ours to write. The past would always be a part of me, but it would no longer define my future. As the first stars appeared in the evening sky, I whispered a promise to the night, to love fiercely, to live boldly, and to carry the whispers of Thornwick, not as burdens, but as blessings. For in the delicate balance of darkness and light, we had found our own kind of forever. And as the wind carried those ancient whispers away, I knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The carriage wheels crunched over the gravel drive, each stone echoing against the cavernous silence of Thornwick Manor's looming presence. Twilight painted the sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges, casting long, twisted shadows that danced over the manor's weathered stone facade. I peered out the window, heart pounding, as the grand structure came into full view, its Gothic spires piercing the darkening sky like the jagged teeth of some ancient beast. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and even the faint rustle of the wind through the towering oaks seemed to whisper secrets long buried within these walls. As the carriage came to a halt, I gathered my skirts and stepped out onto the cold stone steps, my breath catching in my throat. The manor was breathtaking, its elegance was undeniable, yet it wore a shroud of melancholy. Ornate carvings adorned the heavy wooden doors, and gargoyles perched like silent sentinels atop the parapets, their stone eyes watching my every move. The garden was wild and untamed, shadows pooling beneath tangled vines and thorny bushes, as if nature itself resisted the manor's sombre enchantment. I hesitated, before pushing open the front doors, the heavy wood groaning in protest. Inside, the air was cool and musty, filled with the faint scent of old roses and extinguished candles. The grand entrance hall stretched before me, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness. A massive chandelier hung overhead, its crystals catching the last light of day and scattering fractured rainbows across the marble floor. I felt the weight of countless eyes upon me, ghostly witnesses to weddings lost in time. Every wedding held at Thornwick Manor had ended in tragedy. The stories whispered among townsfolk like warnings carried on the wind. I had heard them all, yet here I was, drawn inexplicably to this cursed place. Was it madness or fate that pulled me here? I could not say. But as I stepped further inside, a strange warmth prickled at the edges of my skin, a sensation both comforting and unnerving. My footsteps echoed as I wandered through the shadowed halls, each room steeped in the rich, dark velvet of Gothic elegance. Tapestries depicting forlorn lovers and moonlit gardens hung on the walls, their colours muted by time. Dust motes floated like tiny spirits in shafts of fading light, and the distant call of a raven echoed through the manor's vastness. Drawn down a narrow corridor, I found myself before a heavy oak door partially ajar. Beyond it, a dimly lit parlour held a solitary portrait, its gilded frame tarnished with age. I approached cautiously, breath hitching as I took in the image of a bride in a flowing white gown, her dark hair cascading in soft waves, her eyes hauntingly familiar. The delicate lace of her dress and the sorrow etched into her pale face spoke of a love that had endured beyond death. I reached out hesitantly, fingertips brushing the cracked glass. A shiver ran down my spine as a sudden chill filled the room. Who was she? Why did her eyes seem to search mine with recognition? A name whispered through my mind disorder. The air thickened, and for a moment the boundaries between past and present blurred. Shaken, I stepped back into the corridor, the manor's silence pressing in around me. I knew my arrival was no accident. This place had called me home, and the stories it held were now entwined with my own. As night fell and the manor settled into darkness, I vowed to uncover the secrets hidden within these ancient walls of Inn, if it meant confronting the shadows of my own soul. The journey had begun, and I was both terrified and strangely exhilarated. Thornwick Manor was more than a setting for my wedding. It was a living, breathing entity with a history that I was destined to unravel, and somewhere in its depths lay the truth about the bride in the portrait and about me. But as I turned away, a whisper brushed my ear, soft as the rustle of silk. "Welcome home, Elara." The manor awaited, and with it, the fate I could no longer escape.